This is Playlist Parlay, and I'm your host, Josh Serto. Episode 3, The Essential Poco with Fred Treece. Music by Scott Motton. Hey everybody, my guest this week is Fred Treece. He's a bandmate of mine in a band Cantamos out of Arnold, California. And we're going to talk about a band that I'm not familiar with at all until I started doing research. The band's Poco. So, hey Fred, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh. How are you?
I'm good. So, give me a rundown of your resume. You've been a musician in the Tri-County area for a long time. And you knew and I know a ton of people. When we first met, we had a deep, long conversation of, hey, remember this guy? Is he still alive? and so you and I have both just played with so many folks. You want to give me a rundown of kind of the history?
Well, I first moved to Calaveras County in 1991, and I did not establish myself locally. I was involved with Bay Area bands. I lived in Alameda for years, and I was stuck with my Bay Area roots for a long time, probably longer than I should have.
Okay.
But after a lot of things didn't work out for me, so I ended up going back to work as a cabinet maker. And while I was doing that, I met some people who were familiar with the local music scene. That was just after the turn of the century, 2001, 2002. And I kind of ran into some local people like Ron Shaner and Bill Wells, started hanging out with them. I jammed with a blues band that was popular locally called Lost in the Shuffle, and ended up kind of filling in for one of the guitar players that was with a group called the Space Heaters, which was another Ron Shaner band.
Okay.
And I ended up taking a full-time position with that, and we changed our name to the Tour Guides, and we were working with a singer named Jessica Mauser.
Okay.
An excellent rock singer with and she had a repertoire that was different from what I was used to playing. I came from country bands. I played in a lot of country bands in the Bay Area, so I wasn't really aware of playing pop music. I didn't have to go through that top 40 business, you know.
Right.
I was playing classic country and what was called new country back in the 80s and 90s. Anyway, the Tour Guides eventually split off into more of an acoustic oriented band when Michaela McFarlane eventually joined the band and replaced Jessica. Jessica was ready to move on, I think. I think that's the best way to put it. Jill Warren also eventually made her way into the Tour Guides, and she's a great popular local lady. Entertainer, singer, guitar player, just a fantastic entertainer. Anyway, she was briefly with the Tour Guides, and so eventually that group metamorphosed okay, into the Cantamos, which was a kind of an acoustic version of the Tour Guides after Michaela McFarlane had joined the band.
Okay.
And eventually that led back into a more electrified version of the band because we wanted to play kind of, well, it's hard to do acoustic versions of Madonna songs.
Right.
Which is where Michaela that's kind of where her pop sensitivity was. And she did all kinds of, she's a great classically trained singer. So she liked all kinds of music. She liked folk music, anything from, I don't know, name your classical opera vocalist of the century. She was there, and she was always also with Madonna and a bunch of unknown to me female vocalists, pop vocalists who were gaining some popularity. KT Tunstall, Sarah Bareilles, just some great singers that I was not aware of, and I was, kind of grateful to be in a band with somebody who was, kind of had their finger on the pulse of what was going on in current pop music. Anyway, so that was Cantamos, and still together after 15 years, 17 years, whatever it is now.
Yeah.
And we still perform locally, mostly in Calaveras County. There was also a brief moment where, it wasn't that brief. I was probably with Bill Wells, another fine folk and rock singer based in Arnold. He had a band. We called it were we the Bills? I don't remember.
I don't remember what his band was called.
I think when Ron Shaner and I were with Bill, we tried to call ourselves Bill Wells and the Distractions, but guess what? The Distractions had already been taken up by
Leilani, I guess.
Leilani,
right?
Yeah. So we got in a little bit of trouble with Leilani, so we just ended up calling ourselves Bill Wells and Friends, and which was a fun group. We did some different stuff too. He also had his finger on the pulse of more undergroundish singers and songwriters. He's a kind of a singer-songwriter guy, but we also rocked it up, and it was a fun band. So,
yeah, good deal.
So that's basically my local resume.
So it's interesting that the first time I met both you, the very first time we actually met, and Bill for me, was through the event Hermit Fest, which is way up on Highway 4 in Bear Valley, California, music festival that Ron started. Is he the founder of that?
I think he can say that. Yeah, I think he can say that was his idea, because it was a project that the Ebbets Pass Scenic Byway Committee came to him wanting to promote the Scenic Byway, which just opened, 10 or 15 years ago. But however old Hermit Fest is now, that's how
long the organization's been around.
That's how long the organization has been there. Anyway, so they came to him to put a kind of a music event together to promote the Byway. So I
don't think. Well, we did all practice. We had like a super band that one year where Grover Anderson, who I play with a lot. And
when it was still at Hermit Fest.
Right, when it was still at
Hermit Valley, yeah.
Right, the last year at Hermit Valley, I think this was, before it moved. Now it's in Bear Valley, so it's a little closer to Arnold. But when it was still out in the woods, we did like a super band mashup, and I played drums. I don't remember who played bass. Andy Merrill played bass. So it was me and Andy and Marshall, and then you played some guitar and maybe some pedal steel too.
Yeah.
And Bill came and sang, and Jill Warren came and sang. That was a really fun.
It was fun,
and that's how you and I really met the very first time. And the first time I met Bill too was at that rehearsal event. Yeah, and to name drop a little bit, my from the Hot Dark and Risky Biscuits, Kyle Williams has told me on a number of occasions that Bill Wells is his favorite performer, like ever.
That's nice.
And because Kyle's a fantastic music producer, guitar player.
He really grew into something special.
Yeah. And for his opinion to be, my favorite performer is Bill Wells in Bear Valley or Arnold or wherever Bill actually lives over there, is saying a lot. And I love listening to Bill too, because it just feels like, I don't know, it's soothing. He's just he's an inviting kind of performer.
He's got a James Taylor thing going on.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
Because his guitar and his voice are just like a match made in heaven. I mean, every time I work with him, I'm like, I always say something about it. I say something to the audience. I say, if anybody out there wants to learn how to play guitar and sing, this is how you do it.
It's amazing to me that Bill Wells is not a famous performer.
I think he likes it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know that he ever wanted to be a huge star. You know, he had his construction business. He was pretty happy as a home guy. You know.
Yeah.
So,
but I think he could have done it.
I'm sure he could have. I'm sure he could have. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, that, like I said, the first time hearing you play the pedal steel stuff with him, I mean, same with you. I mean, you're a fantastic player, and I'm glad to be a bandmate of yours now in Kentomas.
Well, thank you, Josh. It was a pleasure to actually play the kind of music that Bill likes on pedal steel. It just lent itself to that. And I had just started playing pedal steel when I was with Bill, so he was patient,
well, I figured that was a Bay Area thing from you.
No. I just started playing about 8 years ago. So, and Bill was my kind of experimental band.
Okay.
There was a couple of rough beginnings.
Yeah, it seems like a tricky instrument to kind of get under your fingers.
Absolutely the most difficult instrument I can possibly imagine playing. I mean, I'm sure there's the bassoon or something like that, you know, the harp, whatever, you know, but pedal steel, you play with your hands, your legs, your feet, and occasionally your brain.
Yeah. Well, because there's no frets. It's all like your ear, on top of having all these moving parts, you have to have really good intonation.
Well, in that way, it's like singing. You know, you have to know where the notes are. The fret markers are just that. They're reference points.
Right.
You know, but where you place the bar over those frets, that's in your ear. You have to be able to hear the right spot. Yeah. But anyway, that's getting a little esoteric here.
No, I think it's just good insight for people to understand how that instrument works.
Yes, and it's also, you know, if I can segue into Poco.
Please, yeah.
Poco's sound, a large part of it was Rusty Young's pedal steel guitar. So my introduction to pedal steel basically was Poco, 50 years ago. So I heard that pedal steel on a Poco album, and I went right out 45 years later and bought a pedal steel.
Just right quick and in a hurry.
That's how it worked out. It's a very expensive instrument, so yeah, I was poor and I couldn't afford one.
So this is an interesting thing because for me, that this is a band that I'm basically completely not familiar with. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I was going through the list, I think I found one song that I even knew. Mm-hmm. But they also are all kind of familiar. They just sound a lot like that 70s Linda Ronstadt, Buffalo Springfield, Eagles kind of thing. And I guess there's a good reason that they all kind of sound like that.
There is a very good reason for that, is because Buffalo Springfield was kind of the wellspring for several of those bands. Buffalo Springfield included as members Stephen Stills, Neil Young, and Richie Furay. Now, everybody knows those first two names. They don't necessarily know Richie Furay. He was one of the great singers in the band, one of the great songwriters. In fact, he was charged with singing a couple of Neil Young songs that were the producers of Buffalo Springfield Records were not comfortable with Neil Young's voice, singing some of the songs that he had written. So they said, why don't you let this other guy sing it? Well, Richie Furay is a great singer. He's come from a folk background. He was in kind of a band, a singing group that was kind of like, maybe you don't know the name, but the Christie Minstrels. The Christie Minstrels were this large folk choir.
Okay.
They sang folk music, but it was like a 15-person choir. And those kind of groups were popular back in the early 60s during the folk movement. And so Stephen Stills and Richie Furay actually met in that. They were called the Go Singers.
Okay.
And they had a house gig somewhere in New York City. And they met there, and they moved to California together, and they helped form Buffalo Springfield. So this is, you can kind of say that Buffalo Springfield was the end of Buffalo Springfield was the beginning of Poco, and the beginning of Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, and the beginning of the Eagles. It kind of inspired people to follow that path into folk and country music, meshing it with rock, with a rock beat.
Okay.
So,
why do you suppose that all these other bands that are peripheral to Poco, we all kind of know their names that we recognize, but Poco itself is maybe a little lost to time, is a fair way to say it? Because I think my music knowledge is pretty good. And this is, when you told me what band you want to do, I had no, like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't know who they were at all. Mm-hmm. So to me, it seems like from just, I was born in 1978. So what's been on radio in my lifetime and the stuff that my parents listened to and other musicians that I've played with in my career, never heard of this band. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, what do you think that's attributed to?
I think eventually it all comes down to two things. Promotion by the record company mainly.
Yeah.
And quality of songwriting. Although, man, there are some great songs in the Poco discography. And it's
and that's kind of the mystery to me. And actually researching and listening through a bunch of tunes just so I could pick 10, because I didn't listen to a bunch before I could pick them. And then listening to the ones you picked. This is good stuff. Yeah. I'm surprised that it was kind of lost buried or under promoted or whatever it was.
Well, there's also as there's a line in the Joni Mitchell song. It's the Woodstock song. Maybe it was the time of year. Maybe it was the time of man. The early 70s were pretty charged up. The late 60s, early 70s were charged up politically, socially, and a lot of the music reflected that. Poco did not want to reflect the darkness of the era. Their songs weren't about fighting and social upheaval. They were simple love songs and brotherly love. It wasn't. They weren't singing about foreboding songs like Wooden Ships or something like that,
Right.
The Crosby, Stills and Nash did explore that side. They explored the psychedelia, along with some pretty homey songs like Our House and Teach Your Children. Those were great songs. I mean, there's nothing, Poco doesn't have anything to really compare with that. I mean, those were great songwriting efforts. And it's just, I think it's a pretty fine line that you can say, this is a great song, this is a good song, which one are we going to promote? I'm sure those discussions went on in the promotion offices of the record companies.
Well, it's interesting because, you kind of like look at music production history, and I'd say up until the 80s, maybe 1980 is a good, just fair number of, nobody knew what they were doing yet. There was no rules. It was kind of like
multi-track recording was new.
Right. But promotion, like album, like how to lay out an album, the old vinyls. And Scott and I were talking when I did his interview about like what a miss it was, how many albums were released without lyrics in the sheets. It's like, there's no Google. How did you sing along? I mean, it was just what a miss that was.
I think that says a lot, too, because the songs that were hits, there was no real guessing most of the time about what the songs were about. You could understand the lyrics. Maybe not so much with Creedence Clearwater Revival, when John Fogerty sang "There's a Bad Moon on the Rise."
Yeah, it's a little muddled.
Yeah, but I mean, his voice was what carried that group. I mean, that's his voice and the songwriting, and just cool, fun grooves. But Poco was a little more subtle, and sometimes the way their phrasing worked out, the sentences didn't necessarily all end on the beat that you expected them to. So, one phrase would carry into the next measure of the song instead of ending in the measure where you expected it to. So there was kind of, you can only surprise your audience so much before they get tired of the surprise and they want to move on to something we can dance to.
Yeah. So when we were talking earlier this week, or maybe last week, you had mentioned that they had opened. Like Poco kind of became famous in the 70s as an opening act for everybody else.
Yes.
So who all did they open? Did you ever see them?
I saw them 3 times.
Okay.
I never saw the original Poco, which I regret to this day. I was too young. My parents wouldn't let me go to concerts.
Okay.
But by 1970, the original Poco was pretty much disbanded. The original bass player, Randy Meisner, who everybody knows as one of the Eagles, was the original bass player for Poco. On their first album, he was the bass player and added his amazing voice to the harmonies. So Poco kind of broke up before they even started. I mean, their first album, bass player's out.
Okay, right.
So their live shows were kind of truncated because they were missing a bass player for a while. And Jim Messina, bless his heart, fantastic guitar player, great singer, good songwriter, took over bass for their live shows.
Okay.
And they still knocked people out. They were just a really good live band. Everybody could sing. Everybody in the band sang. Well, Rusty Young did not sing, the steel player, but a singing drummer, a singing bass player, and a singing lead singer, obviously. But so they always had at least 3-part harmonies going on.
Okay.
And they had their songs went over well live because they were all up. For the same reason the Beach Boys could get away with their live shows. They were not a great band. You know, the Beach Boys were not. They
That's
were
fair.
Great singers, good songwriters, but their live show was reliant on those great songs. You know, the Poco could pull off their studio recording material almost. It was better live than it was in the studio.
Okay.
I think you see that on their first live album, Deliverin'. That was the name of their first live album. That was the first album I bought of theirs because, frankly, the first 2 albums didn't do much for me. You know, as a 12 or 13-year-old kid, I wasn't aware of what was going on anyway. So, but that first live album, I heard that and I thought, wow, these guys rock.
Cool.
And people went nuts over them. It was something different. You know, nobody cared about the lyrics. You know, we didn't care about what those songs are about. Kind Woman, I guess. People knew Kind Woman from, was a song that Richie Fury wrote with Buffalo Springfield when he was with Buffalo Springfield. It's this great kind of R&B gospel slow blues song that just, he just nailed that particular sound of the slow gospel blues. And it had a real cool steel guitar part on it. And it was a showstopper, but every one of their songs was a showstopper. You mentioned, sorry.
Oh, you're fine. We can edit later.
I think you have "Come On" in your as one of the songs in your list.
I do,
which is a song that I don't think it appeared on a studio album, if I'm not mistaken. It was only on their live albums, and it's just a great song to hear live. It's just so up and good message song. You know, it's just basically a love song, but it's about both kinds of love. It's about romantic love. It's also has a verse about brotherly love, which was, like I said, different for the times. Anyway, that's...
Yeah. Well, I find the material super easy to listen to in 2024. Like going just to Spotify and not even listen to my list, but like any of it, just like, just do an algorithm with Poco and other things sort of like it. And I can listen to that all afternoon. It's great. Mm-hmm. It's good stuff. It's held up well. Mm-hmm.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's like the Eagles, and it's a lot of people joke I hate the Eagles, but it's kind of that whatever genre that is, because it's not really country. It's like this amalgamation of folky bluegrass guys that kind of got into not hard rock, but
we still want to rock
pre-pop.
it. Yeah, we want to rock it.
Right. They were trying to rock it, but they were still trying to stay kind of mellow.
Exactly.
It was mellow rock, I guess.
They weren't going to be Aerosmith.
Right. Yeah. Well, it certainly wasn't Aerosmith or Zeppelin or The Who or something like that. But
they did open for The Who.
Really?
They opened for The Who. In fact, Shaner always talks about Ron. If you're listening to this, I will always remember this about you. You saw your first Poco concert was when they opened for The Who, and I said, "What?"
That seems like bad booking to me, but okay.
Well, it wasn't uncommon for that era. I think there were two large promotion agencies back in the early '70s. The Belkin brothers back east and Bill Graham Productions out west. They would often do that. They would book. Okay, let's do a concert with Pharoah Sanders and Led Zeppelin. Just because we want to expose our audience, our Led Zeppelin audience, to a different type of thing that isn't. I mean, Pharoah Sanders was pretty wild,
Sure.
for a jazz guy. So kind of that's the thread tying the Led Zeppelin to Pharoah Sanders. But Poco and the Who, that's a stretch.
Was that a convenience of travel? Were they just like going to be in the same city and then you went, they're both going to be near each other anyway?
I think no. Well, I don't know.
It was more intentional than that.
I think it might have been because there was a lot of that going on. We saw it all the time, and I grew up in Cleveland, and the Belkin brothers were huge. They were the big promoters in New York and Cleveland, and they would do this kind of thing. Jesse Colin Young and Bruce Springsteen or something like that. Kind of odd, but. I could go off into little tangents here that don't really have anything to do with Poco, but you could say that Bruce Springsteen's first album was kind of a folky rock mixed with R&B kind of thing.
Okay.
What he turned into was something completely different, but those were his roots. He was in fact, when John Hammond interviewed him first, he thought he was going to be a Bob Dylan type, and that's not what he was at all, really.
No. All right, well, let's dig into it.
Okay.
I mean, good preamble here. We learned about you and what we got going on. But we have a list, and I'm apprehensive because it's like I made notes, but it's really tough from like the title to get these songs in my head as we go. So you might have to help me out even on my own tunes.
Sure.
But the way this usually works is I start with my 10. And that way, when we get to your 1, you'll get the last word.
Okay.
And we'll take a quick little break, and off air, we'll kind of discuss what we think the essential listening is.
Okay.
And one of the things that I think happened in our list is your stuff, you said you kind of did chronologically, and you went up to a certain point in time. And when I listened to mine, I listened to a lot of newer stuff. There was an album, I guess, in like 89 that had come out that you were unfamiliar with, and I pulled quite a few tunes from that particular album.
Because it's a fantastic album, and I wish I would have listened to it.
Yeah, and I didn't even look at that. I was just really in Spotify, buffet me kind of mode.
Well, it's more your era too. I mean, it was late '80s, and you probably grew up with that music.
Yeah, and again, I don't remember any of those tunes. Only my number 1. That's why I put it at number 1. My number 1's the only tune that I went, I know this song, and my whole life I thought it was an Eagles tune. But anyway, with that whole preamble out of the way, my number 10 is Go and Say Goodbye.
Okay.
Which is Stephen Still's song from back in '68. And I think it's just a good representation of what they do. It's tough for me to talk about nuance because I didn't see them. I don't know them that well, but it's kind of fits the pocket. I think it's a good representation of what Poco sounds like to me.
Mm-hmm. Do you know the original?
Oh, it's not the original.
No, that is not the original version of the song.
I don't think I ever heard Stephen Still's original version. No.
I'm trying to remember what it's like on Buffalo. I know it's very up-tempo. It's like country two-beat kind of thing. And I can't remember if Stephen sang it. I think he did. On this version, Richie Furay sings it. And it's much slower, has a heavy guitar on it. And it's just, I think, an attempt to rock up an old folky rock song from the Buffalo Springfield days, which they did a great job with. I agree. It's a good song and a good theme on a good variation on a theme.
Cool, man. What you got? What you got? What do you got for your number 10?
My number 10, I'm going to call my number 1 because it's the oldest. So, like you said, I'm going in chronological. I can't rate them.
That seems as fair as anything.
Yeah. My number 1 is a medley from the first live album. It's called the songs. There were 3 songs in the medley. One's called "Just in Case It Happens." The other is an instrumental that features Rusty Young on steel guitar called "Grand Junction," and the medley finishes off with a song called "Consequently So Long," which is appropriate because that's the way they would finish their live show at the time. They would finish it with this medley, and it's just a really good way to leave your audience wanting more.
Yeah, I listened to that medley. It's a 6.5, 7 minute cut. To cram 3 different distinct tunes into still that condensed space is, good arranging.
Pretty seamless. Yeah. Seamlessly too. I mean, one leads into the other almost perfectly, and I think it's a showcase for everything that the live show did for people, for the audience. You had good songs, you had great lead singing, you had backup harmonies, you had great guitar solos, great pedal steel solos. It shows off every aspect of the band in this little condensed 6-minute period. And when they leave the stage, you're like, wow, okay, I want to get some more of this. But we have to listen to the Who now.
Were they more successful at the time, like commercially? Were they selling records? And
no, they were always going to be the next big thing. In fact, there's a kind of an anecdote that the filmmaker Cameron Crowe made a movie called Almost Famous.
Okay,
and it's loosely based on his time touring with a variety of rock bands. The movie kind of focuses on one of the bands that kind of might represent one of the ones that he actually toured with. But he toured with Poco, he toured with the Allman Brothers, he toured with the Who, Led Zeppelin. I'm pretty sure I might be getting some of these wrong, but anyway, he toured with a lot of the biggies. And one of the ones that he wrote an article for Rolling Stone about was Poco. Okay. And this was in 1973, I believe. He was touring with Poco, and he refers back to an issue of Rolling Stone where they were just starting out. They just released their first album, and everybody in Rolling Stone said, "This group's going to be huge." Well, that group was going to be huge, except Jackson Browne came along, the Eagles came along, Crosby, Stills and Nash came along, Linda Ronstadt came along, all at the same time.
Right.
I mean, the competition was pretty fierce in this style of music.
And there was a lot of sort of incestuous
absolutely
band members swapping between all those groups we just mentioned.
Yes.
They couldn't decide which one
it was
they
like
were going to stay in.
It was like Major League Baseball is now. You never know who's going to be on what team. Let's see. Randy Meisner was playing bass with this group last year. Who's he with this year? Because he went between Poco, Ricky Nelson, and the Eagles. And so they were kind of trading him around, and why not? I mean, he's a monster talent.
Right.
Just an incredible singer and great bass player.
So it sounds like the members, like everyone around Poco pretty much got some money and got some fame, but not with Poco.
That's largely correct. I think Richie Furia is the one who got shafted the most.
Well, that's unfortunate
because
for him.
It's so... There's so much irony in the way his life turned out. Here he is, this great singer and good songwriter, on the cusp of fame and fortune almost his entire career. It just, for whatever reason, he just either was forced out or forced himself out due to issues in his private life or whatever, or his professional life. Right after he left Poco, he was very disappointed that one of the songs on my list, probably on yours too, didn't become a huge hit because it was such a great song and it had current pop music all over it. It was a song called "Good Feeling to Know."
Yeah.
And there's just absolutely no reason why it shouldn't have been a hit, except it wasn't promoted, and the band wasn't being promoted well, and Richie just got really frustrated with that and said, "Okay, one more album and I'm out of here." Yeah. So he did that. He did one more album and he did a great job. And he wrote a couple great songs on it, and then he was out and he signed on with J.D. Souther and Chris Hillman of the Byrds fame, and they formed what they were hoping was going to be the next country rock supergroup called the Souther Hillman Fury Band. They were going to be Crosby, Stills, and Nash. And they were great.
Never heard of them.
They were great. J.D. Souther was a very strong solo singer. He had a couple of hits in the early 70s. And Chris Hillman, of course, great musician, great singer. And then Richie, and they had one song from that album that actually became a hit. But Richie's problems at home with his wife and his family were mounting, and he just couldn't carry on with it. So yet, another project, Buffalo Springfield, Poco, Souther Hillman Fury, 3 strikes, he's out. Okay.
Yeah.
So he moved to Colorado and joined a church and eventually became Pastor Richie Fury.
Okay. Well, I mean, he found a path.
He's very happy, and he stayed in music. He did solo albums here and there, and he did some reunions with Poco. So the fame and fortune that he really wanted never came, but it sounds like, from this point of view, from my point of view, it looks like he had a pretty good life. He's 82 years old now and seems very happy.
Well, good for him.
Yeah.
And, this industry, I mean, really a lot of things in life, but this industry in particular, timing's everything. Mm-hmm. Sounds like, a really talented guy who just got bad luck for the timing. He just never kind of came the right, probably month, maybe even week.
That's quite possible.
Things were moving really fast there in the late 60s, early 70s.
Well, as an example, after Richie Fury left the band, the remaining members of the band were switching labels. They switched recording labels. Okay. So they moved from Epic to MCA or ABC. I don't know, one of those. Anyway, they did a new album. And the same month that they released this new album, which I can't remember which one it was now, but they released this new album, and the former record company, Epic, released a live album of theirs and also a best of. So they released 2 albums.
So just
2
diluted
Poco
the
albums,
market.
Flooded the market with Poco material, and a really good album didn't get its fair, attention. So
yeah, that's a little spiteful.
That's was one of the ways you could get screwed in this business, and it's in another business it might have been you might have been able to sue somebody, but the record business, the music business is as libertarian as it gets. It's the Wild West, so you can do whatever you want.
I think I might have heard the recording industry in the 60s is the Wild West about every week since I started doing this. All of us talking about that era of time. It really was. I mean, it was tough to decide who owned something.
Well, it was the wilderness. I mean, people know when they can make money. Money people know when they can make money. They're always going to find somebody they can make money off of. And, a young, hungry musician is, willing to do a lot of things to get their music out there and become rich and famous. Well, you might become famous. Why do I know Richie Fury? It's not because he's rich,
Right.
He's just a fantastic musician. And I was lucky enough to become aware of him through my other members of my family.
Okay.
I have older brothers who were much more aware of what was going on in the music world than I was at that time, and they exposed me to a lot of that stuff. But it's how the industry can chew people up and spit them out. So.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal at that time.
Yeah.
So my number 9 is what we talked about before is Come On. That was my number 9. Again, not a lot of thing, but it's a positive tune. Sounds good, feels good. My notes are telling me that, it's a sort of a Carpe Diem themed thing. I don't know if there's anything else really specific to talk about historically about it, but I liked it. It made my list. What's interesting is I did kind of hit a wall in this. I think I got to about 12 really easy, and trying to find that 13th one that for me, there's a pretty clear cutoff in the songs that I was exposed to in this process where I found a dozen. And then number 13 was like, yeah, this is, and I just had to figure out which 2 I was going to cut. It wasn't like, some of these other bands that I've done where it's like, man, I could do 30 of these and have a hard time getting rid of one.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that I think they're bad. I think maybe
familiarity.
Familiarity. I think having not been exposed to it before or have it is a nostalgia. One of the themes I've talked about before on the show is nostalgia really has to do with your life from about 7 or 8 to about 18. That's just magic time for whatever age you are. That age for you is when life was really great. I'm starting to become aware of the world around me, a little bit of politics, a little bit about girls and boys and all these other things. And then right until responsibility really kind of kicks in, that time is great.
Yeah.
And the music that came out for whoever's talking about it during those years, I think
it's the best.
Yeah, it's the best. It's the best music ever, and this seems like it was hitting in that time zone for you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, whatever we're doing, bad weather, right?
Yeah, bad weather. Good, because I was just going to start talking about Paul Cotton.
Okay, I'll save you.
After Jim Messina left the band to join forces with Kenny Loggins to a life of obscurity. No, he was fabulously famous after that. But Jim Messina decided to leave Poco, and I think kind of set a gold standard for how a guy should leave a band, because his differences were professional. They weren't personal. He liked everybody in the band. Everybody liked him, but he felt like he wasn't able to grow in the band. There was just, for lack of other phrasing, there was too much talent in the band for him. So he joined up with Kenny Loggins. No competition there.
Yeah, that seems like a hollow
well, it was
argument.
just the two of them, though.
Sure.
In Poco, you had 5 guys who could run the band. Anyway, so Jim Messina went on a final tour with Poco, and I believe that's where that first live album came from. But on that tour, they decided on Paul Cotton through a series of ironic tangents in the music business that I won't get into. If you want to read the story about how Paul Cotton ended up in Poco, it's an interesting story for me, but for most everybody else, it probably wouldn't mean anything. Anyway, he's this guy from Chicago who was tangentially connected to Poco already, and Jim Messina took him under his wing while they were on tour, while he was still on tour with Poco, and taught the parts to the songs, which aren't easy guitar parts. Sometimes they're pretty intricate. And in order to learn Poco's repertoire, he kind of took Paul Cotton under his wing. And towards the end of that tour, they were playing together on stage, which was kind of cool. And so Jim Messina left the band amicably, and Paul Cotton took over. His guitar playing was a little harder edged than Jimmy's. Messina is more of a straight country player.
Okay.
His tone is just, his Telecaster tone is just to die for. It's just a fantastic tone. But Paul Cotton brought something that Richie Fury wanted. He brought a harder edge to his guitar playing, and he also brought some great songwriting with Bad Weather.
Okay.
Bad Weather is just a fantastic ballad that he had done with his former band in Chicago, which was called Illinois Speed Press. They slowed Bad Weather down a bit, added some steel guitar and some backup harmonies and some shared lead vocals, and it's just a great arrangement of an excellent song. And why was this song not a hit? 1971, we're talking about a flood of this kind of music, and Bad Weather just got buried for whatever reason. It's unfathomable to me, because the production might have something to do with it. The Poco was not happy with the way this album was produced. It was produced by Steve Cropper of what was the name of the Booker T and the MGs. He was the guitar player for Booker T and the MGs. So he's a pretty famous guy,
Sure.
Has a string of hits already to his name, but he was never a producer before, and he was in a new studio, and Poco was kind of his project. So the production is a little bit lacking, but I don't, it's still...
None of these songs felt to me like they were poorly produced.
No, especially for the times. I thought From the Inside was a good album, a very good album. In fact, it's probably my favorite Poco album, because I can't think of a song that I don't like on it. I can't think of a throwaway.
Yeah.
Most of their other albums, you could tell, well, this one,
what the filler
this one
ones
wasn't
are.
meant to be a hit, was it? But on this album, I mean, Paul Cotton wrote a song about his dog. It's called Old Forgiver. And I didn't know what the song was about at first, but when I found out it was about his dog, I thought, man, this guy kills. Because the only other person I know who's written a song about his dog and had it become a hit was Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
He wrote Martha, My Dear for his first dog, and then that was when he was with the Beatles, and when he was when he formed Wings, he had a song called Jet.
Right.
And that was about his dog Jet.
I didn't know that Jet was about his dog.
Jet is about his dog.
Wow.
So anyway, that's my knock my promotion for Paul Cotton is, if you can write a good song about your dog, you got something.
Yeah. Tough material to come up for.
But Bad Weather is just, it has an iconic pedal steel guitar solo in it. Anybody who's ever played steel guitar knows about the solo in Bad Weather. So
Cool.
it's got everything.
I've got my number 8, When It All Began, which is the first cut off of that Legacy album in '89 that I chose. And like I said, for no particular purpose, I didn't even realize there was a 10-year sort of hiatus between records that sounded to me pretty fluid. It didn't sound like it was a departure or a different kind of sound, or to me.
It's not a 10-year gap. It's a 20-year gap between the group that played this album, that played the Legacy
from
album.
the members, right?
Yes.
Yeah, 20 years.
Yeah.
But 10-year basically for the band putting any material.
No, it wasn't
out.
that long. It wasn't that long. There was, let's see, I think their last studio album was in '84.
Oh, okay. I thought the last one was in '79.
79, no. Legend was in '78. That's when those two big hits came out that you know.
Okay.
Yeah. When It All Began is a song about Poco.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's good.
Yeah, I liked it.
Got a cool guitar riff in it, and lyrically, I think it holds together. And of course, Richie's voice never left him.
Yeah. Yeah, the vocals are rich. And it's cool. I like the bands from that era, like the Eagles, that the front man rotates. Mm-hmm. You know, they pick the sort of the best vocal tone or vocal register, support the tune. And it's one of the things I like about whatever genre this is. Mm-hmm. You know, it's a it's not always the same singer,
right?
Which I think has a lot of value.
Yep.
So your next one is Railroad Days, 73.
Railroad Days was on the same album as Bad Weather, which I believe was 71.
My notes say that this one came off of Crazy Eyes. Railroad Days is Crazy Eyes.
Not everything you find on the internet is correct.
Well, that's true, kids.
No, Railroad Days is on From the Inside. That was released in 1971, and it's a great guitar riff. It's just a fantastic guitar. I've been trying to characterize Paul Cotton's guitar playing, because I think he's really good, and I think nobody knows who he is. I think he deserves some attention, but his guitar playing has a lyrical quality to it that I think is comparable to David Gilmour.
Wow!
I think he's the country version of David Gilmour, and there's a couple solos in some of the songs coming up in my list that I will mention that's where I got the idea from. But this riff on Railroad Days, I'd never heard anything like it before. For a guitar player, having a thematic riff go from your sixth string. Okay, guitar players, this riff covers all six strings, and it's all single notes on all six strings, and it holds together. It's not just a jumble of too many notes. It's just a really cool riff, and it's just over two chords, and you can learn it. I'll teach it to you. Come to me. It's just the coolest thing. It's like the riff on Jamie's Crying. You know.
Okay.
It's just really easy and fun, and it sounds great.
What more could you ask for?
Yeah. So there's that, and there's also, what is this song about? Why wasn't it a hit? It's another one of those. It sounds like my brother and I, when we were both Poco fans, my brother and I thought it was about a hobo, walking along the railroad tracks. But I've decided over the years that it's more about the recording industry. This is at a time when Paul Cotton's life was pretty tumultuous. He was between bands. He just left his longtime band from Chicago and joined Poco, which had all the appearances of falling apart. Here you've lost a bass player, you've lost a guitar player in the span of 2 years.
Right.
So
I just got on this ship.
Am I jumping on board the Titanic or what?
Right.
So he wrote this song about finding a new engineer and laying down new tracks, and it's twice as hard on my stride when I take a day and let it ride. It's like he was under the gun to produce.
Right. I wonder if as an incoming member, his contract might have been a little different than everyone else's.
Could have been.
He might have had an individual that put a little more pressure on him as an individual instead of just as a band member.
Yeah. It has that frantic quality to it, too. The song, it sounds frantic. It's a rocker. It's definitely a rocker, and it's just loaded with all kinds of really cool stuff. Background vocals, drum fills, bass fills, and a couple pretty cool guitar solos. And it's also a song when they played live, Rusty Young would just do some very bizarre things with his pedal steel guitar. Like stand up, grab his chair, his metal back chair, and use his metal back chair as a slide bar on the strings, on all 10 strings, with it turned up loud. So this song would get pretty crazy. And when you think of Poco, you think of the song that everybody knows that you thought was an Eagles song. You don't think about this wild and crazy pedal steel guitar player, but let me tell you, man, he was fun to watch. He's a great steel guitar player, straight steel. When you want to play a country song, he's right there. When you rock it up, man, he's like Jimi Hendrix. He did everything but set it on fire. There's a video of him pushing his pedal steel guitar off the stage, and it just falls out over 6 feet off the stage onto a concrete floor.
He knows not cheap,
and he
right?
just looks at it like, oh, well, there goes another one.
Wow.
Anyway, that's Railroad Days.
Okay, so my number 7 also came off that 1989 Legacy album, and it's Nothing to Hide. So these are the last couple of tunes that you weren't familiar with either until I picked them.
I just started listening to this record again. I think I listened to it once when it came out, and I thought, yeah, you know, but yeah. I was into something totally different at that time. But as I listen to it now, Nothing to Hide is Randy Meisner at his best, singing a song that could have been on an Eagles album. You know, it's a waltz tune. It sounds like Take It to the Limit. It's every bit as good as that song. It actually kind of charted too. It was like number 26 or something on Billboard. I think it might have charted pretty high.
It's a good sounding tune.
Yeah.
I don't remember it being on the radio from like 89. I would have been 11, and really just starting to get into music as a player and really as an active listener. And I don't remember this tune from my childhood, but I also
I don't remember it from my adulthood. So
I guess that makes sense. But yeah, it's a good tune. And another one that's like the theme of them trying to stay positive, not addressing controversial topics, not challenging an audience from a theme perspective, but just putting out good sounding material with really consumable messages that aren't cheap either. They're not cheap messages, but they're easily consumable messages.
Yeah, you could tell these are solid performances and solid writing. I don't have much to say about that album because like I said, I've just started becoming familiar with it, but there is some fantastic material on it. Another one of Randy Meisner's songs is called Rough Edges. Oh man, you can't believe it's the same guy. You know, it's a different, maybe not a dark song, but it's harder. It's definitely harder. Anyway,
so that puts us.
I'm at.
What If I Should Say I Love You?
What If I Should Say I Love You? Okay, this is the last choice from the Inside album, which is the first Poco album I think I ever bought. So it was a big influence on me.
You wore the grooves out of this one?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. What If I Should Say I Love You is exactly what it sounds like. It's a love song, but it's a love song with some, I guess, sort of foreboding message in it. It starts with a pretty cool guitar riff again. There's just so many great riffs on Poco albums. Anyway, it's just a really cool guitar riff, and then a soft, sweet first verse that kind of leads it in. There's 3 definite parts to this song.
Okay.
There's a very soft, sweet verse. There's a kind of a hesitant pre-chorus. It's kind of like something's coming, but you're not sure what it is. And then there's this bombastic bridge. It's like, okay, this isn't just a love ballad.
Yeah.
This is a song about the realities of falling in love and being uncertain. And
so there's a musical, emotional journey too.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I liked about Poco is their lyrics, their songs, attitudes seem to match the musical approach. So they have this kind of soft couple, 8-measure verse leading into this pre-chorus that says something to the effect of, okay, Are you going to hurt me or what? Are we real? What's going to happen here? And are you going to break my heart? And then this bridge comes along and says, dang, you broke my heart. Now I'm throwing this song right up against the wall. See what happens to it. And it's just this loud rock and roll guitar part, and the background vocals comes in, and the whole dynamic just goes up 900%. And then it ends, and it comes back down, and it's like, okay, so that's not really happening, and then you go into the second verse, and you do the whole thing over again.
So because guys never learn.
No, no, and you're not sure if it's with a different girl or what, but it's like, okay, this is how my story's been going. How's it been going for you? But I just think it has all those emotions that you go through when you feel yourself falling. You're just like, man, am I going to do this again? Is this going to? Is this it, or is this one going to bust me up just like the last one did? Because you never, after that first bust up, you're just never quite sure again.
Sure. So my number 6 we're doing a weird numbering together, but that's well, it's not weird. It's just not the way I normally do it. Mm-hmm. This one says that this is from the inside. It's Anyway Bye Bye.
No, not from the inside.
Well, I'm just not going to trust my notes at all.
Anyway Bye Bye is, I believe, from the first album.
Okay.
Yeah. And I haven't listened to it for a while, but I remember it's sort of a what if I should say I love you kind of thing. It's kind of soft and ballady with a little rough patch in it, and I can't remember exactly how it goes. But
yeah, it's kind of the notes.
Another Richie Fury production.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to you. We're at A Good Feeling to Know. We talked a little about this tune already, but this one I agree. This I'm surprised wasn't a hit.
Yeah, it's just it's mid 70s rock and roll, middle of the road. There's just no reason why it shouldn't have been a hit. I can think of one thing maybe, other than the lack of promotion.
Right.
And you're not going to like it. It's the way the drums go into double time. They go into a gallop on the third verse, and I think there's something that it distracts.
Yeah, it loses the groove.
Yeah, and it continues. It stops during the chorus, which is great. I thought, well, that's good, but then it comes back in again for the refrain, and it just to me it was a mistake. I think it was a production mistake.
Yeah, it's tough for me to evaluate at this time. Like, what they clearly were trying to do is make it more interesting and higher energy. But, a lot of these decisions about music has to do with the contemporary other stuff being released at the time. Mm-hmm. And back then, radio play was everything. It's, now we get to choose. We have, Spotify and things like that. We can much more easily choose what we want. We were sort of buffet style for music. You went to the record store, so you had some control of what you listened to, but that cost money.
Yeah.
If you just wanted to listen to music, you listened to what the DJ spun.
Yeah.
And if a tune didn't, either the DJs just didn't like it, because they were doing a lot of their own programming back then. This is before, radio was all pre-programmed by the central scrutinizer up there, and little
That's
Zappa reference. But yeah, so I don't know. I didn't live through the era to understand what that was, but you did, and if that's your instinct, I bet you're right on. I bet it just was.
It was just enough, I think, to just say, okay, there's something about that last verse that's. Poco's MO was to add some dynamic element every time a verse came around. Either take something out or put something in, just to change the dynamic. And I think that particular decision wasn't a good one, because other than that, I think it's a fantastic song. There's so much on it. There's Rusty Young playing his pedal steel with the organ tone that he used. He had he would run his guitar into a Leslie speaker, and sometimes put a wah-wah on it in addition. But yeah, just running it into the Leslie speaker with all the sustain that a pedal steel guitar has, you can imitate an organ sound, and he was the ace at it. He invented that. Whenever you hear that organ sound on a Poco song, it's not an organ. It's going to be Rusty Young playing his steel guitar with that sound.
Okay.
But that was one of the featured sounds on Good Feeling to Know, along with all the great vocals.
Right. Yeah. So
is that where we intersect? Because
I think so. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the list. And we're right. Good. So we basically at the same time. So Good Feeling No for both of us.
Yep.
So that makes it.
That's a good feeling to know.
That is. So that makes it my turn again. All right.
Yep.
No, I don't know what we did. I think that was yours. So I think I'm at. You Better Think Twice.
Okay.
Is where I think we are.
Mm-hmm.
If only somebody was taking better notes. but
do you remember what it was about this that you liked?
I don't.
This is a Messina song from
the first album,
second album, and there were the second album was kind of a strange production. The side A had what you would consider typical Poco type material on it, just good upbeat pop tunes with an I think there might have been one slower tune on it, and the side B was this monster jam of a song that they did on their first album, and it was like, well, why are they doing this? They resurrected a song called Nobody's Fool, and then they did a kind of a Latin jam on a Latin flavored jam after the song lyrically was finished. They go into this conga and drum.
Were they known as like a Grateful
Absolutely.
Dead kind of jam
They
band?
could jam with the best of them.
Okay.
They could do an extended jam. They were excellent musicians, and they pulled this off, especially considering it was a studio album. But the jam goes on for like 15 minutes. I mean, it's like, are you going to hold your audience attention for this, or what's the point of doing this? In other words, well, everybody else was doing it. It was one of those things. So it was 1970, 1971, and the Allman Brothers were huge. The Grateful Dead were huge.
Well, and I just, again, back then it was a little bit Wild West, and if they only had, 6 new cuts and they wanted to just get a new thing to sell, a new thing on the market, filling that B-side with a jam lets you have less material.
That could have been it. I'm not sure that was it. I don't think there was ever any shortage of material with those 3 or 4 writers in the band.
Yeah.
Anyway, your choice of Better Think Twice. I only know the version from the live album, from that first live album, which is mostly acoustic. It's just acoustic guitars, and I think Rusty Young might play dobro on it, but it's just an acoustic guitar and the vocals, and it's great. It's a great guitar riff, one of Jim Messina's better riffs, and he sings it, and he sings great. It was kind of a big secret in the early Poco that we have this guitar player who's actually a pretty good singer. We're going to bring him out.
Yeah, so might as well.
Yeah, and little did we know that Messina had a bunch of other songs that he wanted to do, and that's one of the reasons he left the band. But anyway, Better Think Twice. The studio production has again some great twin guitar leads on it, a cool pedal steel riff on it, and all the all the great vocals, cool country groove. It's
right.
Pretty straight ahead country. I mean, this could have been a Buck Owens song.
Sure.
So
that puts us at now it's your turn, and I think we're at Angel.
Okay. Angel is from Poco's 7th album, which was called 7. And it before I get into the song, the album cover was designed by Phil Hartman, who was Phil Hartman was a member of the Saturday Night Live cast late 70s, early 80s, I believe.
Yeah, he was on one of my favorite sitcoms of all time was News Radio.
He's just hilarious.
Yeah,
he's
it's a great sitcom.
A great personality, but he's also a fabulous artist.
I didn't know that.
And he designed the horseshoe cover on Poco's 7th album. So he established kind of a relationship with Poco after that. He did designs on a couple of their album covers after that. But anyway, Angel. Angel is... It didn't grab my attention right away until the ending, which features kind of it's a na type vocal that leads the song out. It's just no lyrics, just a na kind of thing.
Right.
But in these na-na-nas is this little spot, a break in the vocal action, where George Grantham, the excellent drummer for this band, throws this woodblock sound in on a downbeat, and it just like accentuates the whole riff, the whole vocal riff. It's like the first part of the na-na's over. Here's the period, and there's the next part, and it's just fantastic. Every time I hear it, I'm like, how did he come up with that? It's just so perfectly placed.
You know, I had a lot of fun on one of the more recent Grover Anderson albums of really for the first time for me recording to get away from just being a drum set player and just really try to write
percussion stuff
in and how impactful a single hit of something can be to change the feel of it. Like one tambourine or one wood block or one
vibro slap.
I
love that thing.
We're sitting right next to I've got a set of Roland V drums literally sitting to the right. And on the rims, you can have different triggers. And I keep a vibra slap on the floor tom rim at all times when I play this kit. Because it's just, and also it's sampled, so it always sounds good. Like a real vibra slap, you got to take 15 takes to get one that really, everything rattles correctly. But with the sampled one, it's always really cool. And it's just a nice, handy sound to have available to you. I love vibra slaps. It's the wood blocks. And
but on this song, it's like there's the element of surprise. You know, it's like what they say about jazz music. You know, jazz music is about the how do you bring the element of surprise in? What are you going to do different this time? Sometimes I think in jazz music, the surprise gets overdone and you kind of get tired of being surprised. But in pop music, if you think of something like this woodblock hit, it's like it totally makes the part. Now the rest of the song became interesting to me because of that, because I realized, oh, they put some thought into this. What else is going on here? Well, there's a really cool sound that Rusty Young is getting out of his steel guitar that I can't quite describe, except I think knowing what I know now about effects units, I think he's got some kind of a compressor on it or a limiter, and it has this really percussive sound, but the sound of the actual slide is so silky and clean and smooth. It's like, how did they do that? You know what? It doesn't even sound like a steel guitar. It sounds sort of like an acoustic guitar with a playing slide on it. But it's so clean and clear. It's like, wow, okay. So what's going on with the rest of the song? The rest of the song has these amazing backup vocals.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah, that's what I caught of this one. And it's also more of a ballady.
It's a ballad.
It's not one of the ones where they're trying to rock out. This is a real ballad.
No, it's got an acoustic guitar theme on it, and the riff, again, Paul Cotton comes up with a brilliant riff, and it's acoustic guitar this time, and I'm like, okay, I'm sold. I'm sold again.
I love like talking to guitar players, as a drummer, and you guys all turn into like forensic guys when you start hearing tone. Like you hear a song you haven't heard before, and you're like, well, that's a cool guitar. Like, what does he do there? Is that a tube screamer with a? And it's like you all turn into like these forensic guys that are trying to figure out exactly what must be happening.
Well, it used to be just what is he playing? How is he playing those notes? And it's like, oh, I can do that. I can play the notes. Well, it's in the last 40 years, it's turned into something completely different.
Sure.
And it's almost impossible to sound like somebody else.
Staring at the sky. and I'm not going to say what album I think it's from because I'm probably wrong. I don't know if I shifted everything, like I had a spreadsheet, I don't like just one off.
Oh.
It says, my note says that this is off of Roses Cimarron.
That's quite possibly true.
All right, I'll take possibly true.
Yeah, it's either that one or Indian Summer, and I can't remember which one. But yeah, okay. This is a Tim Schmidt song.
Yeah. So it says that Roses Cimarron was 76.
Mr. Golden Throat himself.
Yeah. You know, when I hear men that can sing that high and have good vocal control and everything else, I think, man, that's really cool to be a guy and still be able to sing in that register. Mm-hmm. But Tim's a great bass player too.
I'm glad to hear you say that.
Great.
Yeah.
And it's almost a little unfair that he gets to be as good of a singer as he is for being how good of a bass player he is. Because he's just so tasty. He fits in. He's one of those guys that if he was in town, he'd be one of the guys I'd hire.
Absolutely.
He's so tasty. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he can sing too and do it live. It's mm-hmm. not like he's, a good studio guy and then on the road, it's like, we got to bring another bass player so that he can focus on singing. Yeah. He can play these. I want to say they're difficult, but just playing bass and singing is difficult mm-hmm. anyway. It's a lot harder than like playing piano or guitar and singing, mm-hmm. in my opinion, mm-hmm. or drums. I actually think playing bass and singing is harder than playing drums and singing, from my personal experience. Mm-hmm. But to play as pretty and melodic as he does, with the technique that he does live, and then be singing something completely different. It's like Sting. Sting's another one of those guys that just got unfair amounts of talent. He mm-hmm. got a disproportionate mm-hmm. amount of talent for a life. Mm-hmm.
It's McCartney-esque.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's
the rubbing the stomach, patting the head thing.
And it doesn't seem fair. You're right, because I think the thing with Tim Schmidt and Sting and Paul McCartney is they understand the role of the bass, and they're excellent musicians.
Right.
So they're not just playing 1-5, 1-5, 1-5. Although if the song calls for it, that's exactly what they do.
Right.
And then they're singing like that. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, but just
for anybody that doesn't know, we're talking about Tim Schmidt, who sings the Eagles' "I Can't Tell You Why."
Right. Yeah.
He's the singer for that song, and his beginnings in professional music were with a Sacramento band called the New Breed.
And he's a Sacramento native, right?
He's an Oakland native.
Okay.
He started his professional playing in the clubs in Sacramento, and then he auditioned for Poco at the same time Randy Meisner did, and Randy Meisner was chosen over him because of a certain familiarity. I think that was. There was a link between George Grantham, Rusty Young, and Randy Meisner. They had all played in the same clubs in Colorado.
Okay.
And when they moved to California, it's like, okay, let's get Randy. He's great, But Tim Schmidt also auditioned, and when Randy left, they brought Tim right in.
Right.
So
it's probably a coin flip for that audition anyway.
I'm sure it was.
I can't imagine a situation where you got Tim Schmidt, Timothy B. Schmidt. If you're going to Google him, it's Timothy B. Schmidt is how he. Yep.
But I think maybe Randy's voice was a little more developed at that time than Tim's.
Possible, sure.
Tim's voice, you could see the arc of his growth as a singer as you went through the Poco albums, and by the time Rose of Cimarron or Cantamos came along, it was like, holy God, this guy has the voice of an angel.
Yeah. So I think that puts us at your turn, and we're at High and Dry.
Okay, Cantamos. This is from an album called Cantamos, which is where I got the name for our local band. So thank you, Poco. The word Cantamos means we sing. And this album that they did in 1974, I believe, was the second album they did that year. 7 was released first, and then Cantamos came like a few months later. It's like Richie Fury left the band, and suddenly everybody else's songs were allowed now.
Yeah.
So they had a backlog, and they did them all.
Cool.
So High and Dry is this catchy little melody with a two-part harmony, lead vocals. There's no real single lead voice at all in this song. It's all two-part harmony, except on the chorus when it becomes three-part harmony. So it's Paul Cotton, Timothy Schmidt, and George Grantham all singing.
Okay.
And then there's this totally cool breakdown in the middle of the song with a short drum solo, followed by some acoustic guitar interplay between Paul Cotton and Rusty Young.
Okay.
And then so it's like a throwback to the first album, really, or the second album, a kind of a throwback song. And
this one's pretty driving, as I recall, right?
It's very driving, and it's obviously an attempt to get another hit, you know. So
Sure.
it's very catchy and simple. There's a lot of sound in the vocals. There's high and dry. I couldn't tell you things. It just ain't the same. Lots of long vowels.
Okay.
And believe it or not, that sells.
Sure.
But it didn't with this song again, and who can say why, you know?
Yeah. Timing.
Oh, I know. This is when they were between labels. They were changing from Epic to ABC, and Epic released those two
greatest hits.
compilation albums.
That'll tank a new album.
Oh man! Every song again. This is like from the inside. With Cantamos, there's not a song on it that I don't like. There's no throwaways.
All right. I think that puts me at Indian Summer.
Okay.
This is these top three are now, I think, are tunes that I really liked.
Okay.
Like the rest of them, like this seems representative of what I'm hearing. These seems like material. I didn't live through it, so I'm just picking what I like to hear. I don't know what the historical value is, but Indian Summer is a tune that I think is just it's a really good song. And to me, it's a surprise that I haven't heard this on the radio my whole life. I can't admit, I don't understand why this song isn't something that you hear once a week on a classic rock station.
Well, there in the mid '70s, there was the separation between radio stations was starting to happen. You had your hard rock stations, you had your folk stations, you had your country stations, you had your classical stations, and you had your MOR stations. If you're middle of the road,
Okay.
if you were listening to middle of the road stations, you would hear something like Maria Muldaur, maybe some Joni Mitchell, and occasionally a Poco song. And this was probably the Indian Summer, I think, charted on Billboard because of its MOR status. It wasn't being played on the hard rock stations. You know, this is 1974
Yeah.
or 5 maybe. Anyway, this was the Aerosmith era and the beginning of disco. You know,
Right.
Maybe the middle of disco. So it was Bee Gees. You know, but it sort of had that smooth rock feel to it. You know, it's kind of just a loping, gentle song with nice vocals, some unusual chord changes, a cool guitar riff
But
again.
interesting.
And interesting,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's an easy listen. It's an interesting listen.
If you listen to it more than once, you'll hear something different.
Yeah, there's a richness to it.
Yep.
And you know, I mean, this band's rich, I think, in a way that's a little bit different than I've talked about all in the show. These are all just such good individual players coming together. It's almost like a super band in a sense, where some of the other bands we've talked about are all really good players that they stayed with one project, like or like the other bands we've talked about so far are Stevie Wonder and Earth, Wind and Fire, and then Van Halen, and they mostly kept their memberships, the same. Where this band had a lot more comings and goings.
Yep.
But all the people who did come in and out of this band are monster players.
Yes.
So the richness doesn't come from production and preparedness. It comes from kind of that jam band thing like the Dead, but not really being a jam band.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting mix. And I'd say it's kind of like the Eagles. I mean, Joe Walsh and Timothy B. Schmidt and Glenn, and these are good players who brought a richness, and they were able to maintain a lineup a little bit longer, and then they got rich beyond just the personnel too. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's part of why Poco suffered, I guess, as I'm saying it, is maybe just like we said, like the personnel changes didn't ever allow for the richness to go beyond the individual members and translate much deeper into production and establishing how the tune went versus, from the live album. Was there, the live version was not like what you got on the record, and so people didn't want to buy the record because they liked the live, or they liked the record and they went to see him live and they got sort of like an almost jam band thing, and it wasn't what they were expecting. Well, I wonder if that kind of hurt them in the long run.
I don't know. I might disagree with you on that, because when I saw Poco live, I was never disappointed, and I knew their albums inside out. Okay. I thought they were always as good live, at least as good live as they were in the studio. And I think they tried to capture that energy that they had live in the studio. I think a lot of the time they actually recorded live. Okay. I don't think they only overdub vocals and maybe guitar solos or something like that. But I think they played together a lot in the studio. And tried to capture that immediacy of a live performance. They never sound contrived to me. Yeah, even their songs that I know were contrived, they don't sound contrived.
Present them.
In a way. Sound energetic, like they're in the moment.
Yeah, well, it's just a mystery to me, because but certainly a lot of richness here in these top three for me, and I really appreciate them, and probably started incorporating him into my list. Spotify does a cool thing at the end of the year where it says, this is what you listen to, and it gives you like your year recap, in December, the first week of December. And I'm really excited for this year because I'm listening to all this material. I'm going to end up with so many more plays on Spotify of different things than I have any year in the past. But it'll like sort of clue me into which ones I went back to. And I don't want to like think about it. I just want to like go back and these new things I'm discovering, if they like get replayed, great. And then Spotify will kind of tell me at the end of the year. And I kind of think that Indian Summer might be one of those tunes. Yeah. I've certainly listened to it more.
That's interesting, because I don't regard Indian Summer as one of my top 20. It's not there.
Oh, I like it. I think it's a good song.
I don't. Again, you're not going to hear me say it's a bad one.
Sure. So I think you're at Rose of Cimarron.
Okay. All right. Rose of Cimarron is the song that Rusty Young wrote that he's most proud of.
Okay.
The album, I don't think it was such a great album. There was some weird things about it. It was this, believe it was the same year that the Eagles did Hotel California. And their album cover of Rose of Cimarron kind of maybe stole a little bit of that idea. But it's very nondescript. There's no name. There's Poco name does not appear on the album cover. Just the title of the album appears, but it's just a painting or a drawing of them in front of an old adobe house.
Right.
Okay. So the story behind Rose of Cimarron is this song was written about an actual historical character. And the Cimarron territory was what is an area of the United States that's now the Oklahoma Panhandle.
Okay.
And the Cimarron territory was kind of a lawless area. It was actually, I don't think it ever achieved territorial status. It was just a region, the Cimarron region. Why it was called Cimarron, I don't know. I'm not sure of the story about that. There's no river called the Cimarron River. There's no Indian tribe. It might be an Indian name. But anyway, it was an area of the country 40 miles wide, 130 miles long, or something like that. Plenty of room for outlaws to hide out. And that's what they did. Rose of Cimarron was a person named Rose, can't remember her last name, but it wasn't Cimarron. But she was a rancher's daughter or something that kind of started hanging around with the wrong crowd. But she wanted an exciting life, and she didn't want a boring ranch life. So she didn't want to be a rancher's wife or anything
So
like
she
that.
hung out where the bad boys were.
So she found an abandoned house out in the prairie and offered sanctuary to people who were running from the law. And she took care of them. She healed their wounds. She cooked for them, got them back on their feet, and kind of became legendary that way. And all this at a very young age, like she was between 16 and 18 years old.
Oh, wow.
But and I'm sure there's a love story in there, but the Rose of Cimarron song is basically about her and her interactions with these sort of folk who'd come under disfavor in the general public. So they needed a place to hang out for a while.
Right. Well, for the kids, we'll say the Robin Hoods.
Yeah, or the Billy the Kids.
Sure, right.
And the problem with the song, again, why wasn't it a hit? Because it has everything. It has a great vocal line. It's practically a sing-along song. It's got great background vocals, has a great guitar solo, has a cool chord progression. It's got everything. People didn't know what it was about. I didn't know what it was about until the internet came out, and I looked up everything because I wanted to know. But if you didn't know what the song was about and you didn't know the band, what's going to draw you? You know,
right?
Do people? I don't know. You know, it's the staying alive factor. You know, we know what that song means to us. Even if we didn't catch all the lyrics, we like that staying alive, ha ha ha, staying alive. You know, we like that. What the hell is Rose of Cimarron? Well, it's an Old West story.
Too
I
abstract.
like those things. I knew about the Cimarron territory, and it just grabbed me. I said, this song is about me. I don't care what the rest of it is. It speaks to me. And again, it has a great ending. It has a great the dynamics of the way the background vocals fold in and out of the chorus. The guitar solo at the end has a great lead up to it. It's another David Gilmour type guitar solo, if you ask me. It's like if David Gilmour was asked to play on this song, he would have played exactly what Paul Cotton played. So,
yeah, Paul Cotton's not a name that I'm familiar with or know of, and maybe I should.
And why should you? You know, it's if you don't know Poco, you don't know Paul Cotton, because that's where he made his mark. Right. And you know, to me, one of my favorite guitar players. Very lyrical. There's no flash. There's no Eddie Van Halen in his playing. Right. He's like David Gilmour. He's very lyrical. You know, I would say George Grantham is a lyrical drummer. Everybody in that band sang. Everybody in Poco sang. So when they played their instruments, they played it as if it was another voice.
Yeah, I would say that George is a drummer like how I try to be, especially when I'm just kind of sitting in with bands or new to a band, in that you just try to blend in. Mm-hmm. You know, you kind of want to create a groove, create a solid base so everyone's nice and solid. You know
where the bread is being buttered.
Right. But you also kind of want to stay out of the way. I want to show off. And the fact that he was singing too and doing it, he does. He just kind of melts into I don't think anyone's going to walk away going, that drummer was fantastic. But anytime that you listen to a bunch of tunes and you're bobbing your head, or you're moving, or people are getting up to dance, and you never saw the drummer show off to get it to happen, that's a great drummer, in my opinion. Yeah. And I strive to be that guy. Yeah. And I think
the Stu Copeland factor.
yeah. You know, just grooving for, you know, can you do this? Do you have the discipline to sit here and be simple for 5 minutes and not lose the energy, you know?
Well, what I mean by lyrical playing is that his fills seem like they they just either lead out of or lead back into a vocal line. It's like okay, da 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 la 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 la. You know, one of those kind of things. It's
Okay.
just it's like he knew where he knows the song. He knows the song inside out.
Right.
And
he knows how to support everything. It's not
Yes.
just the layer above him. He's supporting all the way to the top.
Here comes a guitar solo. You know.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, good drummer.
Yeah.
And hard to talk about because there's nothing flashy. He's a hard drummer to talk about, but clearly a very good drummer. So my number 2 is the crossover. Now I get my good feeling to know. This is where it would come on my list. We've already talked in depth about it, so I think we're going to jump ahead to your number 2. Yes. So sorry for the break, guys. We had a rehearsal scheduled in the middle, and we've finished that, and here we are 3 hours later trying to pick up where we left off, and we think we were talking about Crazy Eyes still, because I even missed that in the list, and we're trying to pick that up.
Yeah.
So that was one of your picks there, Fred.
Yeah. So why did I choose Crazy Eyes? Well, it's the title cut of the album, which kind of drew me to it, and I thought, well, what's this about? You know, I did not know what the song was about. I didn't know. Generally speaking, I don't really care. I listen for the production. I listen to the instrumentation. I listen to the virtuosity of the vocals and the instruments, you know, but this one is a composition like I was just mentioning almost like a classical composition where there's a theme and a variation on the theme. It's a pretty simple song lyrically. There's only a few stanzas with a basically verse, chorus, bridge kind of thing. But the thing that happens with these, with this simple arrangement of lyrics is theme and variation. Each time it comes around, there's a different way of leading into it. For example, there may be you may go through the song once with just the lead vocal. Next time through, you use a single harmony vocalist. The melody in the song is just, it's simple, but it's almost it's almost disconcerting how lonesome it sounds. Graham Parsons was the subject of the song. Richie Fury wrote this song about his friend Graham Parsons, who was another country rock vocalist of the late 60s, early 70s. And he was kind of a troubled soul, but he was also an amazing talent. And his voice was known to leave women in his audience crying when he sang a ballad.
Wow.
He just had that effect. He could sing. He could break your heart with his delivery, and he could also sing a rocker too. So he was a very talented singer songwriter. So Richie Fury wrote this song about him and kind of delved into that, more of the heartbreaking side of his talent and his personality with the lyrics, and the way the composition develops over time. I mean, banjos and dobros come in and out, introducing the next verse. Everything's fairly. I mean, I speak about Poco as being kind of they have a spontaneous kind of sound when they perform. This one, you can tell everything's written out.
Okay.
Everything sounds a little reserved, but it's still very interesting. It holds my interest. It's a song that goes on for 9 minutes, and as you know, no 9-minute song is going to be a hit.
Right. Or get radio play.
It wasn't meant for that. It wasn't meant for that at all. But what happens during the course of those 9 minutes is full orchestration comes in and out. Orchestration leading into banjo solos. I mean, this is something new.
Right.
And then there's one of Paul Cotton's fabulous guitar solos. He's at his David Gilmour best on his solo on Crazy Eyes, and it's just it leaves my mouth, my jaw wide open every time I hear it. It's like it's one of those. And
Wow.
you come out of this guitar solo into one of the orchestrated sections, and then these angelic voices with Richie Fury and Timothy B. Harmonizing together. It's just an amazing composition. So again, it's, if you look at the hits of Poco, Crazy Eyes is not going to be on there. But if you're a Poco fan, Crazy Eyes is going to be one of your favorite songs.
I wonder how many of these guys are like in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but not for Poco. I bet a fair number. Stephen Stills must be. Timothy B. Schmidt, I'm pretty sure is. The Eagles are inducted.
I know Richie is for Buffalo Springfield, and obviously Stephen Stills is in for several.
Several, right.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Timothy B. is in there. I'm not sure about Loggins and Messina.
I'm not sure either.
I don't know.
That would be the one that would be up in the air for me, because I don't know if they were inducted, but
yeah.
They probably will be before. That seems like it would be an overlook to me.
Yeah. Well.
But I'm just thinking about, like, you talking about all these members, and like these are like all probably or destined to be Rock and Roll Hall of Fame individuals, but not for this particular band.
Yeah, I don't think Rusty Young would ever be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Okay.
Not for Poco, not for anything. Poco was basically his only band. He other than Poco, he was pretty much a sideman. He played in Vince Gill's tour band for a while.
Okay.
He did some other session work, but Poco was his thing. Tim Schmidt, I think, is in for the Eagles.
Right.
And George Grantham, no.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, George probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, he didn't have another side project besides Poco either.
He toured, again, he toured with some country artists. He toured with Ricky Skaggs and Roddy McDowell.
McDowell, right.
Country singer. And
but not with anyone in the capacity where he would be inducted with them.
No.
Right.
No. So they are in the Colorado Music Hall of Fame. And Poco did a special concert for their what do you call it?
Induction.
That's exactly what I was looking for. In their Hall of Fame induction concert, they were very well received. It was not the original band. It was the Furry, Schmidt, Grantham, Cotton, and Young. And, that's a fairly beloved version of Poco. It's the one that lasted the longest, I think. So,
yeah.
Everything else was kind of hit and miss with the players, but they did do some minor touring and spot shows here and there for various festivals. They did a Farm Aid or something like that one time, and they did a special reunion for that. But not going to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah. All right. Well, so
that's Crazy Eyes.
That's Crazy Eyes. And then we went back, and I think we might have touched on, but I'm just going to say it again in case we didn't, that my number 2 was A Good Feeling to Know, but that already was on your list. We've already talked about that song. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about my number 1, and so you get the last word. And so my number 1 was Crazy Love. And the reason is it's the only song that I immediately recognized. I know this song. But, joking with my dad, I think I played it, and I said, yeah, this is the band I'm doing for my buddy Fred. And he said, oh, is that Buffalo Springfield? And I thought, well, no, this is I thought it was the Eagles who did it originally. So both of us thought, like, we knew the people. We could hear who did it, but we just associated the bands we knew and not this band. And it's a really pretty tune. I mean, I don't know that it really deserves to be number 1 because it's solely there because of recognition, but I don't think it's a bad tune. I think it gives you the feels. I think it's one of those tunes that is recorded and executed in a way that you kind of feel something when you listen to it. But I don't know that it really truly deserves to be number 1. What do you think?
I think it's a well-crafted song, but as I said before, it's not an identifier with Poco. It's almost like, well, maybe your dad heard some Buffalo Springfield in there. Maybe you heard some Eagles in there. I think even as a Buffalo Springfield or Eagles tune, it's not a great identifier. It doesn't really, it's not really what the band was about. This is a folk song. It's a love song in folk style.
Right. I agree with that. I don't think it's indicative of the style or a good identifier, but it is a good song.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah. And so that's the reason it landed where it did for me.
Yeah.
So your final song on the list is Ghost Town.
Ghost Town, yeah. That's I think that's the last record I bought of Poco's. It's a departure because they had the only sort of original members left were Paul Cotton and Rusty Young. Rusty Young had taken on a frontman job, left his steel guitar banjo trip behind, which was a heartbreaker for me because that was, again, that's an identifier. That's what set Poco apart from just about everybody else. We have this great multi-instrumentalists on the side, along with all these talented singers and songwriters. So with Rusty as the front man, that was out, playing steel guitar. He did it. He did cameos on the pedal steel.
Okay.
There were a couple songs on the album Ghost Town where he played pedal steel, but the overall tone of the album is we're an 80s rock band, and Ghost Town I think exemplifies that, but also maintains that kind of Old West theme that Poco would sometimes use in their songs, like Rose of Cimarron or others like that. They did hoedown songs. They did bluegrass numbers. They would throw in an instrumental here and there. They were just kind of trying to stay true to their country roots, I think, with that song, with Ghost Town. It's it gives you an eerie feeling. It's a song about a ghost town. Rusty Young's father had a ranch, and there was a ghost town on the ranch. So he was kind of reminiscing about what it was like to visit that ghost town, and he humanized it by saying the lyrics. In the lyrics, there's no lover whose heart burns in this ghost town, just the long shadows chasing each lonely sundown, which I think is a great line.
Yeah, that's a good lyric.
Yeah. So and the melody kind of fits that. It's kind of a foreboding song. Ghost Town is not my favorite Poco song by a long shot, but it kind of represents a direction that they took after that initial 10-year period where they were kind of trying to stay pretty true to their original mission statement, which was to mesh country with rock. And this one, it was a departure. They were going rock and roll. They were going. It wasn't Aerosmith. It wasn't that kind of thing at all. It was what you might call adult-oriented rock. They weren't singing about
girls and drugs.
They
and
weren't
cars.
taking a big chance at the high school dance with a sister who wanted to play.
Right.
No, it was. They sang about love songs and heartbreak and all that kind of stuff. So that's
a little bit more mature listening.
Yeah, as they were 40-year-old men at the time. So it's getting into those years where you feel kind of silly singing about those stupid things that you were when you were 18.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take another quick little break, and Fred and I are going to fight about what we think really does. Because this is an interesting list, because I'm not as familiar. I feel like I did bring some tunes to you that might change it. You because you did it chronologically, there might be just some things that were representative of an era that really aren't representative of like your favorite or what you think is essential. Mm-hmm. So I suspect we're going to have a pretty interesting negotiation here.
Okay.
And we'll be back in just a bit.
Okay.
All right. So after some negotiations off mic, Fred and I have come up with a really, really amalgamed list of both of our original lists, plus one that wasn't on anyone's list. Mm-hmm. So we're going to say that number one was the only crossover that we actually had, which was a good feeling to know at number one. And then number two, Rose of Cimarron. Number three, Bad Weather. Number four, Railroad Days. Number five, Crazy Eyes. Number six is the medley. It's three songs in the medley, but the reason that song is important is because they were doing all these opening things and having to shove as much material as they could in a short amount of time, and that represents that era of their careers.
Right.
Number seven is Come On. Number eight is You Better Think Twice. Now, number nine, this is the weird departure. We're going to put a song called Look Within on. I think in my research of just kind of going through stuff, it didn't come up for me, but when Fred realized I had included this whole album that he didn't know, this is a song that jumped out at you sort of after you had sort of submitted your list to me. And we just listened to it and we agreed that this is kind of the end game. This band has had this long career and trajectory, and that's the most recent album at this point. Mm-hmm. And we think that it's probably the best cut from that newest album. And we just kind of missed it.
If I could just add, that album sounds like it's a pretty accurate representation of how the band would have ended up after 20 years. I think it's a good statement that they made.
Yeah, it's like a good epilogue. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Because I picked a number of tunes off of it, and I wonder if the Spotify, just because of recency stuff, I just got more of that in my possible thing. Yeah. But yeah, it's good stuff. And then number 10, Anyway Bye Bye. Mm-hmm. And so we'll go ahead and put that playlist together and put it in the show notes for y'all too. But this is a lot of fun, Fred. I'm glad you could come do this and hang out today, and we kind of knocked out two birds with one stone, and we got a rehearsal out of the way too. But
well, I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and I will sing the praises of Poco for as long as I breathe. I think they're an amazing band, and I hope this inspires people to go out and maybe give them a listen.
Cool. Well, thanks again, Fred, and we'll see you all next week.
All right. Bye.
If you enjoy this content, please visit our website at playlistparlay.com. There, you'll find a link to our Discord server where you can chat with me, our guests, and other community members. If you really enjoyed the show, please consider supporting us on Patreon. The link is also on our website. Thank you for listening.